Change up the room. Looks nice.
Thank you. Exciting. I know, it's like a literal project.
Yeah, did you guys do it?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Kristen helped us to do the circle, and then of course the IT guys are awesome.
Oh, they got rid of all that stuff?
Right, I know.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Gives me a great pleasure to have Matt, Holton, and Christina here joining us for our second TED Talk Room Doors. Matt brings with him a accomplished art and running background. For those of you that are runners in the room, had a personal best of 2:23 in the marathon and a 30:01 in the 10K, so averaging about 4:47 Gs for long distances. So pretty impressive.
Wow.
Is that good? Like,
Flying.
Some people don't do long distance. Is that good?
That's flying.
Okay.
That is right.
As you can see in this picture, he often gets bib numbers from single digits. Single digits means you got to be blazingly fast. So. But without any further ado, I'll leave it up to Matt to really share some of his insights and motivation for his personal successes with running in our community. So, all right, thanks for being with us, Matt. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for having me here, and thank you for having the time to come and listen to me. So it's great that you guys are sharing this time with me, and I'll try to make the most of it. I met David through running, and running has brought me a lot of places. It's taught me a lot of things. It's brought me here. So my plan is to share a little bit of some of the values that I have in running that have led me to be what I think is successful in running, and it also carried into my artwork, and now I'm also a coach. So I've learned a lot of things in my running that I hope to share with you guys, and also I hope to listen to you guys as I talk, so I can get some feedback. So as much as I want you guys to listen, I also want to listen to you guys and hear some of your stories about some of the same things that I'm talking about. So a little more about my background. I was born and raised here. My family's been here for around 120, 130 years. I found running at a really young age, and it was something that I really wanted to do. It was time I spent by myself. It was time I had a lot of control of what I was doing, and I got to see the results of my hard work. So it's something I found at a young age that I value, and I can't get away from it. I've tried to for periods, but I found myself unhealthy mentally or physically, and I made it part of my life. Like every day now, I run maybe 80, 90 miles, and I'm still training marathons. So that's a little bit about my running background. What I'm going to talk to you guys today about is my philosophy, as well as about 5 values that I have in my philosophy that I think are important being a successful athlete, artist, pretty much anything in life. So before we do that, I'd like to try an exercise. It's just a simple breathing exercise, but I think it's important because it's going to come back to what I'm talking about in my minute. And all I want you guys to do is shut your eyes, and we're all just going to work on breathing. And all I want you guys to try to focus on is your breathing. And I'm going to guide you through about the first 10, 15 seconds. And I want you guys just to breathe, and then I'll get you guys all up. So maybe first take a deep breath in, out. Keep the diaphragm in, out. Now just breathe on your own. Right, that's good. Good. Now, part of the reason why I did that was to have you guys spend some time with yourself and be introspective. But I also did it to help you clear your mind so we can just start with a pretty clear mind going forward in this dialogue. So we'll talk a little bit more about that time you spent breathing later on. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is what I think is really important in my running is to have philosophy. And by philosophy, I don't really mean, the abstract of what is time, questioning your life. I mean, what things are valuable to your life. Those things can be very abstract. They can be very simple. They can be your family. They can be living here on Maui. But one of the most important things that I get from philosophy is the importance of dialogue. And a good philosophy is continuing dialogue about values. So philosophy, it can be whatever it is to you. If you come from a Christian background, you could have values that come with Christian values that are part of your philosophy. What I'm going to talk about specifically is some of the things that I've learned as an athlete in some of the values in my philosophy that overlap a lot of other values and other divisions, a lot of other activities. But these are things that I've learned and I carry with me. So one of the most important things, or the most valuable things that I've learned over the years is the ability to listen. And that listening really is a talent. And it's a talent that you can practice, and it's a talent that you can constantly get better at and work on. And it goes to the key of the theme of philosophy is to have a good dialogue, you have to be able to listen. And in running, I have two experiences that kind of bring out the story of the value of listening. One was working out with one of the best athletes I ever met. He ran 2:05 for the marathon, which is 4:47 per mile for 26 miles. He won Chicago Marathon multiple times, and he was an amazing individual. He loved running and he excelled at that. But when I got to train with him, every moment I spent with him, I listened to him. I wasn't that interested in telling him how much I had done and my story. I was interested in the dialogue I could have to share with me to make me a better runner. And I listened to him probably more than I listened to some of my college professors, my parents, and when he said things that were important to me, it came to my heart and I acted on it. So that's one case where listening was very valuable to me. Another example, it kind of crosses into coaching and running, is I was recently working with an 11-year-old, and initially I wasn't thinking that I'd want to work with a youth athlete, training them that hard. But one of the things I got at the foundation of working with someone that young was to listen. And I learned probably more from listening to him than I've learned with other people that I've worked with. And one thing I wanted to make sure when I worked with this athlete is that I didn't just project what I wanted him to do, that I wanted to have a dialogue and I wanted us to find a medium so that his passion could come out and that he could do what he wanted to do. So listening with him was kind of groundbreaking in my coaching. It took me a step back. I worked with a lot of youth athletes, and it was sometimes my ego would go in front of me, and I wanted to tell them what to do rather than listen to them and find a middle path so that we could work well together. So I don't know. I'm actually going to go on with the next value I have here, which is the ability to be creative. In running is and even in my artwork, it's very monotonous. In most of my artwork and in running, most of the time you spend, people do not see what you're doing. It's all the magic happens behind the curtains. Most of the great athletes talk about Usain Bolt, or we have a sprinter here. you only see them for 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds, but it's 10,000 hours that they've gotten to get to that point. So how do you get 10,000 hours? How do you work through all that, knowing that you might not even be seen for that 10 seconds? You have to be creative. You have to do something that looks repetitive, and you have to find a different way to look at it. You have to be able to either change what you're doing in a different format or add something to it. For me, being creative also means having the abyss as your friend. What I mean by having the abyss as your friend is that the willingness to step into something that is dark, that maybe you don't understand, you don't know, that you don't. And those points are some of the most introspective points, I believe, in our lives, is when we are out of our comfort zone. If you're a wrestler, it's easy, and you're the strongest person, it's always easy to pin someone down, but you're never going to learn anything about being pinned down. In running, if all I did was work with people who I was better with, then I probably wouldn't get as far as when I worked with people who were much better than me. You know? So this is your friend. You have to be creative and think about new ways of doing the same thing over. And that's where some of the value to my running comes from, is how can I do the same activity over and over and still have value in doing it. So I try to be creative with my training. I try not to do the same thing every time. Even when I have to do the same thing, I look at it at a new perspective. I try to make it new and fresh. Another topic that I've been talking a bunch of people to about is that the point that talent is an art. Hard work is an art and a talent itself. In the journey in my running, the most talented people that I met that we see run the fastest times were also the hardest working people. They sacrificed a lot. Their work ethic was amazing. And at some point, if you work on working hard, if you make that your art, whatever your art is, you want to work hard at it, then over the years, your ability to do well at it adds up. A lot of my success in running didn't come from when I first started. It came from 10, 20 years of working at it. I'm now almost in my 20th year of running here, so it's over time. So hard work is something that you can get better at. And some of the most amazing people I've met in my life are people who will not be outworked. They work smart, and they know what will outwork them. They don't have an excuse of not having enough time. They'll get up earlier. They'll make it happen. They'll find time to train. They will not miss what they need to do. Fourth point is focus and time. It comes back to what we were doing initially, which was breathing and trying to focus. In those moments, it's hard, and some of you I'd like to talk about it, to not get ahead of yourself, to actually really be thinking about that breath, and to be in that moment, and not waiting to anticipate, when am I going to open my eyes? What do I have to do next? To me, the most basic way to frame that is, are you here and now? If you are here and now, in my running, this morning I ran 23 miles. There was points in my running and I ran it fast that I was thinking, I was on that edge of being like, well, gosh, how much more do I have? And I wanted to go down that slippery slope, and I was trying to remind myself, you know what? That's not going to make that any easier right now. I need to focus on just being here and now, thinking about my breathing, thinking about my foot striking the ground, and working on my focus. And that's something that in running, in anything, that needs constant attention, is working on my focus. I feel that I'm very strong at running, and in my artwork, I can sit down for many hours and look at a blank canvas and make it come to life. But I still feel that focus is something that I still need to work on. And I worked on it this morning. I work on it constantly. And finally, before I open it up, is one of the things that I really like about this journey that I've gone on with these values kind of driving my navigation is that it's gotten me some pretty amazing people who have some of the same values, who like to work hard, who value time, who are creative. And regardless of art or running, meeting those people have motivated me and have made me believe that those values are really something that are important and worth putting even more of my time in. So one of the most interesting things is that whatever your values and your philosophy are, if you live them and you live them to your fullest, naturally you're going to end up surrounding yourself with some pretty amazing people who, if you have the same values. And maybe some of those people value things even more than you do. Maybe they value time more than you do, and you think you value time quite a bit. It's not always competition, but it can reveal something deep and let you, once again, not be afraid of the bits. Put yourself in a position of compromise, be able to learn more. Anything else? That's basically what I had to talk about with my running. I want to talk a little bit about these pieces here. This piece here is me running 2 years ago in Waikiki, and it's an incident where something that was kind of a dream reality, part in just being a runner here in Hawaii for so long, and then some of the people I got to meet. But just first of all, the finish line is literally like maybe a few feet right here, and this guy in yellow right here is from Kenya. He was given a handicap against a bunch of people, the best runners from Hawaii, chased him down. But he was a world record holder in the marathon. So, given the situation, I have a handicap, but I never imagined in my life I'd have the occasion to be in front of someone at that level at the end of the race. And one thing that was clear is that I never paid so much attention to what I was hearing in that race as in this race, because I had about a mile to go and I knew they were coming. Because people on bikes were telling me that they're coming, and then I had this final stretch. All I could hear is people saying, they come? So I was telling myself everything I told people I closed my life and put my arms, but it was a very surreal moment. And actually, right after I finished this race, I had, in anticipation of and knowing that Patrick McCall would be there, I had painted a small painting of him, and I gave him a painting. So with my art, with my running, I carried my art. So I was able to get some artwork into, now he's the former world record holder in the marathons, hands just at that incident. So it's one of those occasions that, the stars line up sometimes, and a lot of it had to do with my passion. And this here is a painting that I've done. This is not typical of a lot of the paintings that I do, although I do focus on portraiture, and mostly right now I'm focusing on life-size commission portrait work, some of athletes. But this painting is another point where it's an overlap in my life, where it's artwork with running, coaching. This is Renato Canova, and Renato Canova is probably one of the greatest distance coaches in the world. He coaches people at the highest levels, Ethiopians and Africans. But a lot of what I was telling you guys, I've learned from some of the things that he teaches, which is that running can't be absent of like emotional content. You have to have a philosophy into doing this, or else you're really just not going to have much spirit on the track or on the roads. And he's also one who talks about one of the reasons that the East Africans are so successful is their willingness to kind of go into the bits. They almost, some of them don't know any better, but they're not afraid to do things that other people would say, you shouldn't run that way. And they're also very explorative in the training. So this is an example of where my artwork has combined with my running. And in this piece, it's called Count Canova. He kind of has these runners almost, it's like a dream, but coming out of his head, and they're just kind of being produced. He's an amazing coach. All his work is open to the public. So not only is he interested in creating great athletes, he really wants the whole body of running to be better. So part of his philosophy. Anybody have any questions? Or
when did you start doing the painting? You said you ran as a child. When did the artwork start?
You know, I always had artwork kind of like, I always did it on the side. I was really talented at sketching. And then, my dad was a pastry chef at resort. My mom was a painter, and I really kind of thought I didn't really want to do what they did. So I really didn't do too much art other to keep myself sane at some points in college. But when I moved back to Hawaii, I decided to take the energy I had in my running and my artwork, and it served me well because I think I had the time management skills and the discipline and the energy. I wasn't running, so I was just spending 16 hours painting. So I really, the last 10 years, I put a lot of hours into trying to get up my technique and still explore my artwork, you know.
I think something that's unique about Matt is like he's a very accomplished runner here on the island. Consistently wins races. Just one day of hope over and over and over again. He could easily rest on those laurels, but he realized that like to continue to be the best, he had to really spend time with some of the top runners. So he went to running mecca places such as Flagstaff, Arizona, and train at altitude. Yeah. Can you just like share a little bit more about how spending time with like elite runners and like world record holders helped you really realize more than what you ever thought would be possible on your own?
You know, I think in thinking about this question, I was thinking about the idea of hard work, and one of the things that had definitely changed for me from high school and college into training with the best in the world is my concept of what hard work was. And running here, I thought I was working hard, and then in college, I really thought I was working hard, and I ended up going to the University of Oregon, and I definitely was working very hard. And then to spend some time with people who, just the laser and intense focus that they had, the work that got produced out of that focus, made me do things that I never thought I could do as far as workouts. So I think it's training with people. But it was refreshing because one of the things that was the most valuable is that even though, you know, sometimes I was bad and getting my butt kicked on a workout, they were my friends and I was with a good group of people that I knew, you know, so I'm getting my butt kicked by these people. You know, this is something that I can take other places and is really at a pretty high level of running. So, I mean, yeah, working with Felipe Canucci, this guy was running 140 miles a week at elevation, and he was running about 600 mile pace all the time. So it was a whole nother world of like. But I got to meet some amazing people. I got to run with Paul Wright that had the world record, and I also got to meet a lot of people who were involved in sport through the internet, through media, through the many different facets that are out there for, you know, I always wanted to be in the Olympics. It was my goal, and I thought, well, it's all or nothing. If you're not there, you know, there's no other spot for you to be there. But it revealed that, oh, there's, you know, professional photographers, that's all they do. You know, there's a whole crew of media that does that. There's coaching staff, there's physios, there's a lot more to be involved in the sport than I thought initially, which is encouraging because there's some very fast. Running is one of the sports where I think it's one of the biggest sports, so the faster you get, the more you realize that so, a million people, I mean, you think about how many people on a marathon. You have any questions about running or about passion or talent? Or
How do you deal with pain and injury?
Pain and injury. You know, the best way is that I've been very fortunate not to have too many injuries, but pain is a different thing. There's the pain of like your body telling you don't do that anymore, and then there's the pain of this is very uncomfortable threshold, and it's not going to do permanent damage, but you know how long can I be in this and get benefits from it. That pain is definitely a mind battle, and it's very introspective, and it's very personal. It's also something that you really have to work on. Because it's amazing, sometimes through competition, sometimes through training partners, amazing how much of that pain threshold you have and still be relaxed. The other thing, injuries, most of the times that's like either an issue of weakness or bad technique. So I'm always working on my technique in anticipation of injuries so that I don't have to deal with them. So I'm always trying to get my technique better and better. I'm always trying to get lighter on the ground. I'm trying to strengthen the muscles that I don't use that in my running. So I try to balance out my whole body. And running is like the weakest link. It can be something that you really don't think is that important, but if you're running endurance, once that link goes, like your calf, if one calf muscle is weaker than the other, it's just gonna collapse. That's the chain. Everything will come from that point. So, injury is something that I tell a lot of athletes. It's something that a lot of people have to deal with all the time. Actually, it's a big part of the sport. Some people don't escape it ever.
Talk about being a coach, right?
Yes.
And developing people. How do you take someone, right, who's good, and make them better, right? Because in running, there's a certain plateau that you reach, and you could, coach, and they could be doing things. But how do you get them from this level to the next level?
Sure. I think back to my other points, listening. And in terms of listening, it's sometimes listening to what is the best fit for that person. Because sometimes the ego of what you want to do doesn't always match up with what the event that you want to do. With that being said, I think to get people to the next level, I think paying attention to developing their mind as much as their body and treating their mind as a muscle. And because I think once that's unlocked, the body will listen. But sometimes the mind often tells you no, or often is filled with fear. So in some of my coaching, I do spend quite a bit of time also trying to train the mind. And some of it is the way you talk, I think. And some of it is the way talk transforms the way what you think is possible. So I'm a big believer that there's, that there really are no limits, and most of them are the ones we put on themselves. Will I be an astronaut? I'm not really sure about that, but I do know that in running, I've been able to accomplish some things through that I definitely thought were possible, or if you ask me at some other point, it's possible. So coaching the mind, I think you can really unlock some of the potential of what the bodies are capable of doing. And then, as I say in my injury, technique, the better the technique, like we can all improve our technique. So even I think even some of the best athletes in the world still have room for improvement.
So taking that one and developing the ability to focus.
Yes.
Maybe to eliminate distractions.
Yes.
And being able to put, to get that visualized focus.
Yeah.
What are some of the techniques that you either learned or seen that help you grow your focus?
Yes. Some of the things that I've done in running and some of the things I practice in running that I still practice working on my focus is I often like to do almost a yoga routine that's maybe 5 minutes clear my head before I do something really hard. And that 5 minutes, sometimes I do with my eyes shut, and I really try to focus on like what you guys are doing, like breathing. Where like, well, how does this apply to something else? It's the little bridges that you put together that then allow you to focus 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. In a marathon, when I'm practicing focusing, because the best marathoners in the world are focusing basically in meditation for 2 hours the whole time, and they're not really thinking about anything else because they can't be. In my training, I'm always practicing my focus. So that is in the form of intervals usually, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Sometimes 40 minutes. Today was 2.5 hours. In that 2.5 hours, I'm either I have a mantra or I'm working on counting. And counting is really redundant and boring running, but it allows me to realize that I'm not focusing. So I basically get into 100 counts into my breathing, and I focus on that rather than I focus on how far it is, how much further I have to go. I use the numbers as the here and now basically in my running. The other thing I try to do in my running as I'm doing that is I try to really think about the emotional content of what I'm doing. Like what's the purpose of what I'm doing? And if I don't have much purpose, I'm really not going to have much focus in what I'm doing. And my focus will last. I'll have those moments where I'm like, why am I out here running hours? Like, it's hot and everybody else is doing this. But then I have to refocus. I'm like, well, you know, I want to do this because I want to get better. I enjoy the work. I enjoy working hard. So that actually is fun. It's hard though. I'm still trying to find out ways to build my focus because I really feel that at the highest levels of competition, that is one of the most difficult things to have, is that laser focus. And I don't wonder at all. So.
Can you just really quickly demonstrate what you mean? I mean, are you talking 1, 2, just counting? What do you mean by
in my head, basically?
Because running is so boring for me. I use my headphones, but that completely takes off my focus because now I'm listening to music. So if you could just demonstrate real quickly, if you don't mind.
Basically, it's I mean, it's
just counting to 10.
Just in my head. I'm just meditating. Is what I'm doing. Exactly, probably very similar to what we were doing before with our eyeshut reading. It's like that, like just focusing on my camera. So I'm super aware of what everything's going on when I'm running, and I'm anticipating cars and traffic and the road and the surface. But centering my mind, like it's kind of like it's not out loud. It's just in sync with my breath. So and it allows me to not get ahead of myself. So instead of worrying about how many miles I'm thinking, can I just get through this number? So I'm bringing it down to like a level that it's like really trying to be here now, you know. Sometimes I've had other mantras, which one of them is fast, which is like be focused, aligned, stable, have good timing, and that's something sometimes I'll think about, and I'll try to feel it in my brain.
So do you say that over and over in your head, focused, fast, aligned? Yeah,
basically, especially when I'm not focused, when my mind is not there, and that's part of the, I think. This is your friend is also recognizing when you're not focused, and that in itself is a time, because that's hard. Sometimes we live such busy lives that we don't even know when our mind is racing ahead. So I think always trying to get into something. The counting is just something I know that's simple, and it gets me back and grounded again.
So this is like 1, 2.
Yeah. Literally count. And it seems to me that there's focus in, or there's trust in focus almost, in that you almost have to let go to focus. Because you're saying, when I'm running 20 odd miles, I don't want to think about running 20 odd miles. So you're in fact trusting kind of what you've done.
Yeah, I'm trying, it's like Bruce Lee said, you know, it's the punch throws itself, you know. I know how to run. I know the running is going to be there. I just want to make sure that my mind is more in sync with my breathing and my rhythm. It's a way to focus into my rhythm than anything else. So, right, that's one of the challenges of running. If you're going to be doing it that much, if it's 20, 30 minutes, I know, why are you doing it? Right? If you're doing it just for the benefits of exercising, then a distraction may be a good thing. If you're doing it because you really enjoy running and you like the feeling of moving quickly, then that moment of moving quickly is one of the most valuable things that I feel or I experience. So I try to capture that in having my mind thinking about just being there right now. So it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for as you fatigue, because everything else in your body is telling you, I'm sore, and your mind doesn't want to just it wants to wander, think about why you can slow down or why the negative thoughts kind of thing. So,
how do you build then mental toughness, right? Or how do you instill mental toughness into your kids as your coach? Right? Because if you're going to do this marathon, like me, I'm a sprinter. I'm not going to do a marathon because it hurts.
Yeah.
Right? It hurts for too long.
Yeah.
Right? So in sprinting, right, I know that there is an end result. So if I have to do it 200 meters, it's going to be finished in 20 seconds. Right? So
20 seconds? You sure?
But how did you instill mental toughness, right? To get them set up for the long haul.
With running, I think one of the best tools for mental toughness are hills. It's for life. The bigger the hill, the bigger the shed hill. You know, at some point you look at a hill and you're just like that. There's no way I can run that. But if you build up and you increase those hills, it definitely builds a confidence. The other thing is I think just training with people who are better than you, which is sort of that compromise of like, hey, I'm gonna be suck and win here, you know. But hills are to me if you feel that if you get to the point where you're running a hill and you don't really see a hill, then you have a lot of mental toughness in running because yeah, you know, then you're ready for workouts, then you're ready for mental challenges by other people. Ultimately, I think the biggest mental challenges come from your competition, best races, where you're asked to step up and maybe be in that deep discomfort zone, and someone else is pushing you, or the fear of losing or the desire to win is like driving you into that abyss, basically, that zone you've never been to before. And those are special moments. One of the things especially with youth athletes is I try to engage with the dialogue as soon as they have those moments. So after a very hard, challenging race or something where they've done something where I know they've gone beyond, to talk about it, you know, and ask them, well, what did that feel like? How did that happen? Like, what did you do to make that happen? Because I think a lot of those moments are lost. And sometimes people are either quick to celebrate or just look maybe only in the positive or don't reflect on those moments. And like in a race, you know, 20 seconds, if that's it, even though it's 20 seconds, a lot happens in that moment mentally for you. And, you know, 20 seconds, I try to, I'm sure you baseline too. In sprinting, even in distance running, as you get to that finish line, the perception of time really changes, and time slows down, and distances get further psychologically, and a lot happens though in those moments in the last 2 or 3 seconds sometimes, where everybody else is tying up and nobody's relaxed, but it's, you know, it's a weird thing with time.
So I'm just making sure I understand this correctly now.
Sure.
What you're saying is for our employees, if we just keep throwing them pills, eventually they won't feel they won't see the hill anymore, and we can just tag that as an exercise in building mental toughness. Well, right?
I think yes, but also
we just have to define what the hill is.
Yes, yeah, and I think on to that point is the idea of hills with running, not only like technically but mentally, it's also matching with the right hill. It's like a medicine almost. So, you know, you don't give someone a giant hill if they're not ready for that hill. But maybe they need a small ramp so that the next time they can go a little further, or it can be steeper. So you can change some of the variables. With my hill training, in order to get my strength mentally and physically, I keep it the same hill, and I just add 25 meters every time. And then at the end of 2 months, all of a sudden, I'm almost at the same speed I did for much less, but now I've had this new speed and strength that I didn't have before. So matching up the right hill and the right challenge, because those, like, as I say with the competition, if the hill is right and it's a good challenge, the moment right after the hill, having a dialogue about what happened and what were the reasons for that, what did you get out of that extra effort, that is the most valuable, because then that running goes to the future workouts and the motivation to the future. You know, that's like something we talked about it. We used some of those key words at the end of the race. Now we can use that again. You know, and in running with like the hills or building an athlete, it's I like to think about it as you're always adding. You're always adding to what you're doing. You're never taking away. It's always like a cumulative. So you never want to change anything too much where you throw in something that's so new that it doesn't really make sense with the sequence of like everything else you've added. You know, maybe something new and creative, but if it's not really, you know, if I throw something into my training that doesn't make any sense with my training, I might get injured, and it might not help me mentally at all because it doesn't line up with what I need at that point. So.
I think people will get it.
Myself motivated is tough, but you know, I mean, Maui is not a hot spot running, so it's the best success I have is showing them through myself how much I enjoy it, how much I do it, and then working with other people is a big factor. Working with people who really want to be there and work out and work focused, that builds itself. The 11-year-old I was working with, his focus was really high, so, and he listened. So working out, he liked working out, so it was like, his motivation came more from him accomplishing his goals and surpassing his goals, and it just kind of fed into like a snowball, got more and more momentum. So I don't know. Motivation, I like to sit down with a lot of people I take on and I coach, and I try to get a very clear picture of what their goals are, because especially in running, the goals are very wide. You know, sometimes people want to be Olympian, and some people just want to be healthy and good for their life. So identifying what their goals are sometimes is a big part of the dialogue, because otherwise I'm matching up the wrong training with somebody, or if their motivation is to be social, then that has its own part in the running, but that doesn't maybe have that much purpose to like state champions or nationals or
You mentioned something just now. Okay, state champions, right? If you are already at the top of your game, right? Like you're already number one, then like you're state champions. Because I've had this challenge before where I've had a state champion and they rest on their laurels, right? How do you get them to be like, hey, you know what? You're a state champion today, but tomorrow that doesn't mean you're going to be state champion.
Yeah.
How do you keep them like, okay, striving to get better?
Yeah. That's a tough one, because especially at the highest levels. I think some of the athletes here, exposure to the larger realm is very powerful, and that's what got me motivated. So I went to California and ran in a big meet, and I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's doing this. Like I wasn't winning there at all. But David Rudisha is a perfect example. He's an 800-meter runner, and he had it all. He had the world record, he had a world title. I mean, he's going for his Olympic gold title. And as a Olympic gold, he set the world record in the marathons. I mean, I'm sorry, world record in the 800 meters at the same time. And they were talking to him about, like, well, what keeps you going? You have the Olympic gold, you have the world record, like, what else is there for you? And for him, it was much deeper, and I think it's harder for a lot of the younger athletes to understand. For him, it was larger than life. He's like, I'm not out here just for me. I'm out here for the sport. I'm a participant in something that's much bigger than me. So he embraces it almost with that challenge of like, how can I now step it up? I think sometimes with the youth athletes, the ego is sometimes so large that they think that the small pond here really means that they have a huge amount of weight. Well, it is, a world, but the world is much bigger. And I think there's a lot of fear to, I think, some of the challenges of being beat, and especially by athletes here, just in the sense that it's comfortable being here and winning here because it's that big. But I know some athletes do go to the mainland. I mean, there's many places you can go to be humbleized, and to be humble, and not to be humble to the point of like, I suck at this, I don't want to do this anymore, but to be humble to the point where like, hey, you know what, this next summer I really have to do a lot more to in the case of David Rudisha, to display more for the sport. Usain Bolt is the best in the world, but he keeps on doing it because he wants to be a legend. He wants to be bigger than just one championship. So I think that goes to some of those people, their deep values and who they are, and their part, and what their role is in the sport. Some are very humble and realize that they're just part of something much bigger.
Have you had any like notable stumbles in like your running career where you're like, it was terrible when it was happening, but you use it as like a springboard to really motivate you to either adjust the way you were training or bounce back?
When I was training with Lee Panucci, and I knew better not to train with him, but I kept on going into the abyss, and it was like a month of training with him. And, I mean, I thought I was on top of the world because I was training with him, and then I went to go race, and I had nothing. And I had done all my racing with the workouts with him, and I felt awful. And then I thought, I'm just going to back off and do some more running, and I got to the point where I really just hurt. Like, it wasn't any fun, and I lost my competitive edge pretty much for a while. I was with someone so high, training at that level, and I just couldn't keep it up, basically. I got burnt out. I didn't think you could, but I got burnt out. So when I walked away from that, I was kind of afraid to get back into competing. I had walked away from it. But it was weird. Through my artwork, I actually started doing artwork with runners, and their stories kind of came out into my artwork. And sort of the fire of the competition and their stories, naturally, I was surrounded by it in my studio, sort of got into my blood, and I changed everything I did. I decided that I wasn't going to do all my running like I had done before. I wasn't going to be super analytical. I wasn't going to count all the miles. I would go barefoot. I was going to do more strength training. I wanted to do things different. So I actually approached running fresh. And it came from being burnt out on running and stepping away from it for a long time. I got to the point, though, where I was doing so much artwork, I put on weight, and I wasn't healthy mentally. And the value of the therapeutic aspects of running, I needed to have in my life. So that was the main motivator, the artwork, not just stuff. And then working with the youth athletes, the fire and the fearlessness they have, they don't really care about a lot of things sometimes. Sometimes they just care about winning, sometimes it's just tag, but they're inspiration to me constantly. Some of the fearlessness, in a sense, to the sport. Anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you again, guys, for having me.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
This is predominantly here. Really, I hope that we all got something from this name or what this try to figure out how we can sustain the marathon that we run here on a daily basis, the occupancies that we have. The guests that we have to please, and I just want to thank you for sharing this.
Yes.
Now we're going to start the data portion of our own reading. Because turning earlier was to date, that will be the end of our paper. Okay? Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen.
Please take the card closer.
Yeah.
Some days I can't wait to do it, some days I'm like, ugh. Dude, it's because you can go to HoltonGallery.com too, if you want to see more. If they do follow me, then I just tell them that is a very good question. It's
I was gonna ask
so be sure to ask Matt that one. I am not certain, but if you reveal it, we actually decided he was working on that thing in the right. That's all ready to say. We got to meet. What happens? Again, it's that following your passion idea that it's not fun anymore. And again, he puts all his workouts online. This isn't fun. I not somebody secret up with it. I'm gonna love you. Yes, I feel surveys too. No, I'm looking at all just stretch his legs. I'm starting to, you know, and I'm starting to work on it. And I'm really slow. Because I don't know why. I just feel into it mentally unhappy. I have to do it. So I go really slower, and if I know I'm going to go up far, I go even slower then. So I'm like mentally in that place. And this is only happening where, and so I was interested in hearing what you said you did mentally, because I get distracted. Like I literally go, oh, look at that sunrise. And people are loving it. People watch me get distracted. I don't.
but I normally don't. But I carry it in case I get a point where I feel like I need something. You know, but I'm always like, this way, and people run with me like, what are you doing? Why can't you do this? And I was like,
Basically, the staggered.
and what are you taking me down, you know?
But maybe part of it sounds like, it's pretty important. Christina, do you know what you are in bands? I think.
I'm just saying,
I feel more creative in like, don't just go out to a run, like,
basically like,
make it something interesting, right? And there's many different ways to make something simple and fast.
Like records.
Yeah, or
it's really exciting. When we really give it.
or increase your speed, that's all in handles, or run to the next mountain, or
So these really start to wait.
make it exploratory.
Either so different.
Don't go on the same run, but look for some place where
Or
you got maybe find a trail.
guys.
I go to Holton Parks, long
And
beaches,
then
like, there's a lot of places to explore,
the
but it takes
But
time
it's
to
just
do it.
literally
But if
different
it's
shapes, you know,
fresh,
and I've covered it from their perspective, and you just see
That
the
makes total
speed.
sense, because I
Well,
take,
yeah.
yeah, I just see
Yeah.
what you say to them.
Yeah.
And then that's it, so it's a good time when that hair, like you're right.
Come back around.
That's
The
why
final one or two bites. Well, that's great. Yeah, well, that's all this week.
It's the vibe that you have, it's just running it, so I'll do this every time.
Right.
And that's the reason why I hear there's such a lot of stay with that.
Yeah, he said to them, it's like,
It's even though so many people this year,
like I said, I don't have your grades,
even even
so
though
often, I know where the curve, like, I know what traffic, and I kind of like sound it more, so I'll go and talk.
exactly. So these guys usually end up, I mean, they still have like the chase format, they do that. These guys will get like third or fourth place, you know.
Something simple like that, so they're like, becomes a different.
They almost have to hold this year.
But you also see it,
Yeah.
you also see the same thing,
Yeah.
but you're running in opposite direction.
It's so that's
Or great talking about other things in your running, like sometimes I take some, when I can, look at my form in the shadow, I say, oh my god.
it's so to you.
Or I feel very sound like, if I sound like I did, I might end up like.
I sound like an elephant.
Well,
An elephant gets
it's
around.
it's small things that will come in for a little while, so it becomes stronger, it gets stronger, even more. Run, because the way it's easier.
So you pop up.
Yeah. But no, it's tough, like, how do you expand something on this? We're gonna drop that off. Yes. I try. I mean, I do a lot of same reason, but I try to do this no longer. It's like a couple times.
Like how, like the other thing is you have to take 3 pounds in. How are you spending? I mean, my first half, that's what I was gonna say, my first half, definitely, I was out for the rest of it. It's done, hot to me, I'm not going anywhere, head on the pillow, couch potato, I'm taking time off. My first half, I wanted to, yeah. And I literally like took the next day off. I'm gonna take these 3 days off. And because they told us that, I don't know how I'm gonna react. Like, what if I like this? I was, and I mean, when you said that to me, like, oh, rent 20 bucks. I'm like, what? Yeah, what?
I was dreaming about it.
You know, I don't think you actually did. Like, you did, I was with this, I liked it. You liked it. You don't like it.
I was kind of intimidated class, so I wanted to go on that, plus we had a bunch of what's going on, and it's.
Oh, no, he said, that's my half.
What time you start?
It's not gonna be second. Oh, wait, for that, beautiful.
What do you eat before you want? Yeah.
Well, and it's actually quite, the weather was somewhat fast and.
Some juice. I'm hydrated, highly hydrated.
Were you on the 23-mile run, David? No. I asked, how are you standing right now? How are the runners? That's what he said.
Oh, those are kind of like a suggestive of, one of them was supposed to be Moses Mozart, which is, I think he debuted 2 or 3 in Boston.
And coached by Renato.
Yeah. It is very well.
So those are kind of just more individual, just sort of.
Yeah, I figured they were just
Okay.
images of.
Okay.
What was the handicap?
Jerry, what was my handicap? 11?
Oh, no,
You got 11 minutes ahead.
I'm not sure.
You 11 minutes ahead and he's right behind you.
Oh, yeah.
That's all my gosh.
So
That is just like that.
Well, you kind of have to work out some of this.
Awesome.
It's like, it's
30 miles of breakfast, 40 miles.
basically, yeah.
They did, this year they had it to where you could run with them the day before.
That's it.
Yeah, warm up with the cans.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the
And
first
they-
lap, everybody was.
Like 3/4 into the first lap, they stopped. Because they progressively got faster and they got to where.
I would like to handicap.
When they're racing,
Yeah.
he's having 71 a lap for 105 laps.
71 seconds.
Yeah.
400.
Wait, what, 7 seconds to do what?
400 meters.
400 meters? That's really
For
And they're doing that for
105 laps.
That's just fast.
Like yards.
Yeah.
Thinking that whole.
Just add a lot.
I'm trying to tell people like that.
It's not like
That's
Fucking meters something.
Does he think we should do the mountain pass? Is he running the mountain?
No, but I think we're.
What's amazing too is they'll put it in service. We're putting it in, and then they'll put it in service at like mile 20.
No, but that's what he said.
60,
That's 2 minutes.
65.
Yeah, they'll do
So
like
we were
a
into the
120 miles
Wow.
in the middle of like, and the race starts at the end.
I thought
And
half September
This is
full to summer.
yeah.
I didn't
I've
realize.
seen.
It's end of December. Oh, no, they're at the, it's a Honolulu half.
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
a
I feel like-
whole like.
Like some of the runners are smaller.
But it is the
I
Honolulu
feel
Marathon.
like
Oh,
So it's all wrapped up.
Stay away from that.
Even sprinters.
But
So
you
it's,
guys didn't have on TV like
Because I mean, you watch that
Yeah.
But not
It's just like, it's like a gallop.
Yeah, but he has a handicap.
Oh.
Handicap.
Oh, that's why they're there.
Okay,
I'm glad to clarify.
He's very.
It is,
cognizant.
it's
Writes
really
it down.
it's only, it's unique, it's really recent.
Very,
And
not like,
it's actually getting.
yeah, it's all sure.
It's not gonna get.
It's close.
So
So Justin was able to cover his turnover.
It's also how you do like the next day, it's like I gotta have tomorrow, yeah, like a bunch of, that was just his particular.
Seeing relies heavily on his offense.
I know.
So when he's 50, 60 meters, then he starts to move, because he's finally standing up straight.
And he's just in the ground fast.
And
Finally,
we have a lot of,
if someone can figure out the
but
first
they're like, that's that, so we're
an
going to
explosion,
I
right?
think we're not meeting.
Then
Right now.
that's very dangerous.
So I also did that with it. I went, yeah, I was that too. That was awesome. I would also.
But they come in all qualities. Yes. Guys are like 5'4", 8 pounds. Real small, I love feathers. Some of the women
They're like floating on the ground.
Yeah, but then the energy from it.
That's just moms. That's just moms in a heart.
I think so.
I have some backstories. I have some backstories.
Like,
There's
For sure.
Boston.
I have-
Right. Five or six, I think that was super tiny.
I don't think it was just a show. There's some people short of the norm. There's this guy, Zelensky, who's like,
So when I
so
came
we're
back.
not saying that anybody else is going to find jobs. And then I said, it's like, ooh, you're right. 65 pounds, 61 or 2 days. Relatively big.
Yeah.
She's only gone because she sees it.
Did you shrink so you did flex that?
Yeah.
She's
I
right.
went to school.
I know, I know, she knows.
Yeah.
But
6
You stay.
I know we have that facility there. Yeah, I actually do. I forget what his name is. He was a runner. He was actually like, he ran for years. Yeah.
But she can run right
So
That's a great team. Oh, that's right, I mentioned that. Open track run.
Yeah.
That would be like public tracking.
They like kind of like.
And then you just kind of like run.
That would be right.
Just go around.
Like what he does.
It's like every Friday.
It's like where I was, you go, you train.
Ah!
Of course, that.
You can do it.
Yeah, you gotta come. Excuse me.
Every Friday, the track meets at 5:40. Track meets.
That's right. They like have a little, they're like 100 meters.
And you can just, you can just show up.
I'll take pictures. I'll hold your blocks.
We don't want to see
No.
it.
I
I'm singing it.
We gotta bring you, it's like, we bring you like at the end of June, last Friday in June. We are anchored over by one.
No.
See? Come on, we gotta have a sleeper. So you can jog it.
Last Friday in June. No.
As a 27th, right?
We want you to just show up.
I was giving him my time.
We're totally gonna go.
This is what we need to do.
That's so much fun.
Look, it sounds like I'm talking to Matt.
Whatever you're at, 200.
Hey.
Don't push it too hard.
Yeah.
There's one, wait, the 100 is just
I want
the.
to see what it is.
The what? No,
Well,
no.
200 is the curve.
It's that time where you like get to get down.
I got some of the shorts.
And we'll send it out, like,
What?
we'll send it out to the hotel.
And like,
So that we can come watch.
Obviously, the straight up shot. 10 meters to go.
We'll get the glass on it.
Yeah, depends. If I go to the injury, yes.
Excellent.
If I
It's
don't
on
go to the
video.
injury, then. If I go to the injury,
I need your perfect intake.
you know, like, I'm a lot better, I'm a lot further along than I should be right? I'm a lot further along, so.
That's the problem. But just come watch that last Friday. If you can't run, just come watch us.
Yeah.
I have a baton.
And I'll take pictures.
And you did.
I might cross the
You
finish
should
line.
just stretch
Action shots.
Yeah. Throw some water on me.
it. Yes.
I'm across the finish line.
Yes.
Because you know what's our goal this year, to advertise people's email sites.
Yes.
It'll be
That would be, it'd be cool for me to run.
He'll take some pictures off the ground.
You got like the Bahamas headband
I
on.
have a Bahamas, Bahamas,
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, I like that.
I got my Bahamas.
Cool running stuff.
Bahamas,
Getting the flag.
I got a Bahamas one piece.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
Bahamas flag.
Imagine our quarterback.
Okay.
Started, and then it was Morgan, that's brother-in-law, and then David.
Are you gonna be on the team too, David? Are you handing it off to
See who shows
him?
up.
What is this even for?
It's just a open track. It's just a.
Okay.
You
You guys are handing off.
You're handing it off to them, we're seriously gonna.
We're gonna go over.
You know, I take this so seriously. I gotta get the car.
I haven't been talking back to you.
A lot of race. Showing up the day before practice.
The acceleration.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of. you gotta-
Yes.
And he's anchors this time?
Yes.
So he would be handing out to him?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Maybe not with the others.
You have to.
It does matter. It does matter which hand.
It does. We just used our hands the last day.
And you smack it, right? Stick.
Stop it.
I'm in good standing with him now, so like we run a relay and exchange.
Let's see, you'll see.
Now, do you have a Bahama one piece?
No.
Can you borrow
I pull out my old trap.
Matt has both Kenyan and Ethiopian attire.
Oh, wow.
So you could be a whole
It's really
multi,
represented.
yeah, like.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see the cleats out.
Spikes.
Do you run barefoot?
Spikes.
I'm a
Blocks are provided.
Even if it's just for fun, people get it.
Oh, yeah.
It's good fun, and he's like.
So I like.
If you had students like the law, there's sunrise here. College kids.
Well, yeah, well, if you want me to coach me, you want me to
No, just beat them.
PK, I usually do the first, with my kids, I usually do the first like 15 minutes. But then I step off, because by that time I'm like, but they never beat me.
Off the first.
Right off the first 50, I'm like, I can't
Nice.
do it. I just step off.
Oh,
I'm
God.
So I just show them how to come out of the block, and then they come out of the block. I can get out of the block very easily.
Yeah.
And then after that,
Yeah.
stuff starts to hurt.
I think.
Yes. I think we might.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you at the race.
I will try my best.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I will get this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, we'll slow.
Yeah.
I'm still working on striding into.
All right, good to be both of you, okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Steph.